I'm going to start by kind of giving a little bit about alt school. Then I'll start kind of introducing some of the things about myself and the role there, just so you have some context. But then we'll get into some of the specific problems and inspiration we get from the work we do every day, and a couple of the frameworks we use to think about that. And these are the goals that we had on the website for this conference today. I'm not going to do the first one. We actually had a really great example of that already today. Hopefully we'll have lots of conversations of those. I'm going to share the inspiration that I get from you all. Hopefully we'll get a lot of inspiration today. But I'm going to share our learning model at Alt School and kind of what we're working on, some of the problems that creates and that we're trying to solve. But then hopefully we'll have lots of time for collaboration and action later today. So great. So this is Alt School today. 3 years ago when I joined, we were one school, 4 educators, and 19 students. We built this kind of school and this technology company to make sure that we can kind of do that in concert with one another. And through this kind of in-depth research that we're able to do in our own schools that we own and operate, we can build our own products and services to help support those teachers alongside our teachers and students. And also include parent feedback, really making sure that we know all of the stakeholders, everyone has a seat at the table in trying to redesign what schools should look like. This next year we'll have 8 schools, 50 educators, and over 400 students. We'll have 5 in San Francisco, 1 in Palo Alto, and then 2 in New York. This is tricky. Towards the back? Great. I put this slide in here mostly to talk about the complexity of running schools, which this group of people knows very well. You have to have the technology or the tools that you're using in the classroom. You have to have this whole infrastructure to support what it takes to run school every day. Everything from I need paper and ink cartridges to I need help supporting the student who has a learning difference that I'm not capable of kind of meeting. There's also this best practices sharing across teachers, but also outside of the community that you have yourself. And then it's kind of this experience and brand that we have. Alt School right now has our own schools, which is kind of these middle six little buildings with A's on them. But what we hope to have happen is that we can partner with existing schools, help open new schools. And that's really the next phases of Alt School, which I will touch on before we get done. So this to me represents kind of the biggest shift that we're trying to put on the education landscape, is how can we kind of find the balance between these two? Can we have a situation where we have educators that have autonomy and can create a unique experience for our students every single day when they come in, a bespoke experience because of who those children are, what that community is. But also, can we build a system that has central organization that benefits from scale? And how can we build a networked system that has economies of scale and that we get better because of what someone else is doing, not just because of what I've done before? And so that brings me to this word personalization, which has meant a lot of things to me in my career, but also many things to many of us. So I started my career after college in Teach for America, and personalization meant, I probably called it differentiation back then, but it meant kind of trying to meet my students where they were. Then I came out and started working in technology, and personalization means something totally different. Often it means serving the right advertisements to the people based on the search that they've done before. And Max, our founder of Alt School, was the head of personalization at Google before starting Alt School. That's the same space that I was working in, is thinking about how we're aggregating and organizing personal data, but often so that your experience in one application or when you're searching the web was unique to you. And now personalization happens in millions of classrooms, with millions of students rather, hundreds of thousands of classrooms all over the world. But the thing that I'm really trying to push on at Alt School and how I think technology can help us is figuring out how we can benefit from all of those amazing instances of personalization happening. And so when we think about personalization at Alt School, it's not necessarily just the pace that students learn. There's all of these aspects of personalization that happen every single day. It's student agency, it's personal goals, it's ongoing assessments and making sure that they're contextual assessments. It's allowing students to have the opportunity to have self-reflection, the transparency and engaging the student in the process, flexible leveling and pacing, certainly, purposeful inquiry-driven, and interest-based results, making sure that we're actually understanding what the child is interested in. And so through that, we kind of have this purpose that goes through these 3 stages of learning. Students learn best when it's motivated, when it's constructed, and when we're understanding and applying it to the real world. And so when I talk about having network effects and making sure that we're able to be better from what someone else is doing, one of the ways that technology can help us do that is by applying frameworks so that we can have a kind of a common language. And so these next 2 are going to be some of those frameworks that we use at Alt School that I would love to kind of talk about later when I don't have 1 minute and 50 seconds left. So going a little bit deeper is in that learning experience. How are we making sure that we are capturing that wonder for our students and starting there? How are we engaging them? And going into this next stage, which is really about constructing our own knowledge, giving experiences where we're able to do that. And then ultimately sharing, reflecting, sharing with each other, but also the community. And so when we start to build a common framework that says this is how learning happens, we can create experiences that are shaped around this learning cycle. We can create technology around this learning cycle and really make it easier to be an amazing teacher that creates these experiences for students. And then, when we turned and talked to each other, one of the things our group was talking about is kind of what is success of school? How do we measure success? I think this is a really interesting challenge that we have, even as this group of innovators, is how are we going to define that this model of education is successful, that it's objectively great? So one of the ways that we're trying to do that is to take the common frameworks that the rest of the world uses and appreciates. So can we use Common Core standards, next generation science standards, any of the taxonomies that we kind of agree on that help us kind of construct or put a language on what we're learning and why? And how can we actually kind of leverage that we have a common language, but put a layer on top of it of what we actually want our students to accomplish and call those milestones? And can we take advantage of how technology can pull in competency-based assessment and all of the data that we have for our students and their progress, but give it a layer of communication and kind of language that we can use with our students, parents, and teachers? There's 3,500 standards that our teachers would have to assess if they were assessing the specific standards. But to be able to spin those up to 100 milestones is a really helpful thing that technology is better at than people are. So I'll just end with, we are kind of starting an initiative where we're thinking about what should partnership and how can we start to collaborate with people outside of the Alt School system? How can we help people start their own schools? How can we partner with existing schools so that we can get better at scale and get better because of what we're all doing, not in isolation? Thanks.